The YouTube algorithm says that viewers really like list videos. Now, I don't give a rip about what YouTube thinks, but I do love me a good list video, so let's do it. Hello everyone and welcome to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor and I'm your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I do recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below, and it gives you a pretty good overview of what the horror movie syllabus is all about. In short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But we sometimes do different things as well, and this is one of those situations. In this situation, we're going to take the movies from the syllabus, or more specifically, the directors from the movies that were picked for the syllabus, and then we're going to rank them. We're basically going to give you the top 10 directors according to the horror movie syllabus. Now, I want to be clear, this is not my personal opinion, or at least I guess it's my personal opinion in the sense that I picked the movies that were going to go on the syllabus, but when I picked those movies, I did not regard directors at all for the most part, but we'll get into that in just a second. So these results were a surprise to me. We compiled some of the data regarding the various movies that were on the syllabus. Me and my good friend and friend of the channel, Sarah, aka the Rose Bride, we went through the movies on the syllabus and put together a list of all kinds of data, one data point being the directors. And when I saw which directors got the most movies on the syllabus, I was surprised. There were some directors that I thought would be represented that flat out weren't, and you will be surprised by that as well. We'll discuss that a little bit at the end of the video. There were a couple of directors that made it onto this list that I was downright shocked by, didn't see it coming. And the person that I thought for sure was going to be number one on this list is not number one on this list. So there are a lot of surprises, at least to me, and I'm betting to you horror fans as well, you will be surprised by this list. Now, I'm going to reiterate, this is not my opinion of the 10 best horror directors. This is the top 10 directors that were represented on the syllabus. This is math, or if you're from the UK, it's maths. Basically, what we did is for every movie that a director had on the syllabus, they got 2 points. And for every time I mentioned a director's movie as an extra credit film, they got 1 point. And whoever got the most points was the top director. Now, in the event of ties, we had to come up with some tiebreakers. So the first tiebreaker was who had more movies on the actual syllabus versus extra credit. But surprisingly, that didn't break very many ties. So then we took the aggregate Rotten Tomato score of the movies that each director had on the syllabus, and whoever had a higher Rotten Tomatoes aggregate score was the higher slot in the tiebreak. I'm hoping you'll find these results interesting. Like I said, certainly found these interesting. This did not go the way I was expecting it to go, but it was something that I had been wanting to do because it had been tickling my brain a little bit. Like I said, I like lists, list videos, and I thought this would be a fun one to do because I'm not actually picking the results. They're just kind of being told to me. And if you like this, if this is interesting to you, let me know because I've got a lot of other data points. Thanks to Sarah, I've got a ton of other data that we can mine from the syllabus. And it's worth noting, by the way, that these calculations, these numbers don't count the doctorate level selections yet because we're not done with that series. And frankly, all of the movies haven't been picked for that series yet. So it's an incomplete data set. And then the oft promised but never delivered horror movie supplement, whenever that comes out, will also change the results for sure. Will change the results of this list. So we will almost certainly be revisiting this list in the future to see how things change. But for now, let's see what the results actually are. Let's see who are the top 10 directors according to the horror movie syllabus. So right off the bat, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of quick honorable mentions. And the reason for that is because there was actually a 3-way tie for 10th place. So it actually went all the way to Rotten Tomato scores to determine who got that final 10th spot. So I'm going to give a quick shout out, a quick honorable mention to Andre Overdal and Tom Holland, both of whom tied at the number 10 slot, but lost out on Rotten Tomato scores. I have a feeling that at least one of those people might wind up getting on this list eventually. Andre Overdal is actually who I think it'll wind up being. I think he's got a good chance of doing another movie that pushes him into this list. But there's a lot of changes that I'm expecting. I think there's going to be a director or two that leapfrog their way onto here. But I just want to give those two guys shouts out because they just narrowly missed this list. The number 10 director on our list with 6 points is Dario Argento. And Dario Argento is a little bit of a surprise at 10th place. and a real surprise that he almost didn't make the list entirely. And that is a shock because of who he is. He's Dario Argento. He's one of the most famous and prolific horror directors out there, but he's only got 3 movies on the syllabus at this time. More on that in just a second. So he narrowly beat out Overdal and Holland for this final spot because all 3 of his movies were on the syllabus. None of them were considered extra credit movies, and the Rotten Tomato scores were generally high for all of the movies that made it on the list. Not, the biggest one, of course, being Suspiria. So he was able to beat those other 2 and squeak his way onto the list, but it shouldn't be a squeaking in. Argento should be more higher on this list. He should be more represented. He should be more respected, if you will. And I guess that's on me for not picking more of his movies, but it's really not because, as we'll talk about a little bit more as the video goes on, a couple of directors were given a bit of an advantage inadvertently because I didn't know I was going to do this when I made the list or when I made the syllabus, but they got an advantage for having their own subgenre. And Argento did not. His movies are kind of scattered through other subgenres, but he's going to get his own subgenre. I'm spoiling the supplement for you a little bit. Argento's getting his own subgenre because he deserves it. Because there's so many good movies. I'm a fan. I wanted to talk about more of them, and I just couldn't squeeze them into the syllabus, so I gave him his own subgenre on the supplement. So when we do this again, he is almost certainly going to be rising quite a bit higher in these rankings because he will have a lot more movies on the syllabus. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have a lot of fun with Argento. And so he will get more respect shown to him by these numbers in the future. But for now, at least he makes it on the list. So I'm thankful for that because there's at least one really noteworthy director that didn't make the list. Again, I'll talk about that after we get through the list. Yeah, so Argento makes it. For now, stay tuned for him to get a little bit higher. The number 9 director on our list with 7 points is Guillermo Del Toro. And Del Toro surprised me a little bit by making this list, and I don't really know why, because it shouldn't be a surprise. Every time that I've talked about Del Toro, I've raved about him. I've seen in the comments your guys' response, you guys love him too. He's pretty well beloved. He's made a ton of horror movies, and unlike other directors who get who are really talented and gifted and wind up leaving horror to go do more mainstream stuff, he's really stayed in the horror genre by and large. And so he is ranking up points because he keeps making horror movies and he keeps making good horror movies. He really got benefited by the foreign or international subgenres. Mexico, which to be expected, and strangely Spain also helped him out in points, which was interesting to me. He wound up with 5 movies getting mentioned between the syllabus and extra credit, and only 2 of them actually made it onto the syllabus proper. So that's probably where he gets pushed down on this list a little bit. But it's weird to me that it surprises me that he made the list because I believe, I haven't done the research off the top of my head, I believe he is the only director on this list to actually win an Academy Award. So that A, tells you the level of talent that he has. It tells you how great of a director he actually is. And B, really reinforces that point that he stays working in horror, even though he's a mainstream accepted Academy Award winning director. So that's something that's noteworthy, something that's worthy of making it on this silly list for sure. So I don't know why I'm so surprised. I'm glad that he's on this list. I've always liked his work. Even when his work isn't great, it's still awesome. It's still better than most other people's work, and it's still something that I visually engage with, even if the story doesn't always, totally grab me. But he does have a beautiful vision, a really great knack for telling stories, and a passion for telling horror stories in particular. So I am glad to see him on this list. Our number 8 director is James Wan. And this is another director that kind of surprised me to make the list, and it really shouldn't have because for the more modern, i.e., younger audience, James Wan is the bee's knees, man. James Wan has made a lot of really important and noteworthy horror movies in the last 20 years or so, and it is noteworthy. It is definitely something to be credited, and he really has made his impact in the horror genre. So I shouldn't really quibble about him being on here, but I have a suspicion that a lot of you older horror fans will also be barking at this, especially when you see who didn't make the list. And I'm with you on that. I feel you on that. But these are the numbers. These are the maths, and I'm letting the maths determine where things lie, and this is what they've determined. And it's interesting because James Wan had 7 points, which was a tie with Guillermo del Toro, and yet he gets the edge here because even though he had fewer total movies at 4 instead of 5, he had more movies that made the syllabus proper at 3. So he edged out Del Toro for that reason, and it gives him the 8 spot, which is weird. It's weird to put James Wan over Guillermo del Toro. I'm just going to say it, and not to mention Dario Argento. But here it is. This is how it shook out. And again, I think for a younger audience, this makes a lot of sense. In fact, they'd probably feel like he should maybe be a little bit higher. And I respect that. I like to respect other people's opinions and stuff. And if you're a big James Wan fan, leave a comment down below telling us how great he is. Because, I have really liked the movies that I put on the syllabus here. They are worthy of being on here. I have no qualms about that. And here's an interesting thing. This is kind of what I was talking about with Guillermo del Toro is as things go on, James Wan keeps making horror movies. He might work his way up this list even higher as, we make movies from the supplement and things like that. James Wan could find his way up the list a little bit, but he's also become more and more mainstream. He's doing, DC movies and stuff like that. So if he gets farther and farther away from doing horror, unlike Del Toro, it's possible that Del Toro may overtake him on this list. So I'm going to really look forward to doing a follow-up to this in the future, maybe in, I don't know, probably a year or two, to be honest, just to see how these things shake out. But Wan versus Del Toro is going to be a fun one to watch because they're neck and neck. And I have a feeling that Del Toro will overtake Wan. But for now, he's our number 8, and he's earned it. So what can I say? The number 7 director on our list is Joe Dante. And this absolutely shocked me. If you had given me 50 guesses of who was going to make this top 10 list, Joe Dante would not have been in my 50 guesses. I did not see it coming. I did not see it coming at all. Now, it's worth noting he also got 7 points, like Juan, like Del Toro. But he had, and like James Wan, dead hate. 4 movies mentioned, 3 that actually made the syllabus proper. So he was dead tied with James Wan, but really surpassed him with the Rotten Tomato scores. So he takes the number 7 spot. But again, I'm shocked he's even on the list at all, much less at number 7. But the movies are great movies. He really kind of probably gets the edge because of Gremlins, which is, if you saw the small creatures video that we did, and I talked about Gremlins, I pointed out that this to me is like the perfect gateway for children. If you are trying to get your child into the horror genre, Gremlins is, I think, the place to start. And so the idea that Joe Dante is the director of what I think is a rather important movie for a horror education from childhood into adulthood, okay, I'll buy it. I'll buy that he should be here. And you've got The Howling, you've got Piranha, for what it's worth. It's weird. It's weird that he made the list at all to me. I'm not mad at it. I don't have anything against Joe Dante. Just I can think of so many other directors that I think probably deserve to be on this list more, but they're not because these are the movies I picked. So he finds his way on here. What can I say? Now, one thing that might bear confessing is that he's partly on this list because he got full credit for being one of the directors of an anthology movie, and maybe that shouldn't be the case. Talking about Twilight Zone, the movie, maybe he shouldn't have gotten full credit for that because he's only one of the directors of that. But I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to deal with the math. I didn't want to try to deal with partial points and stuff like that. I didn't want to mess with it because I was an English major. I don't truck with math. I didn't really need to do that stuff. We didn't want to make it more complicated, frankly. And 2, it helps another director on this list a little bit too, because that director also got full credit for anthologies, and that's a director I really wanted to see on this list. So I kind of had to let it go for Dante as well. But you know what? I don't care. Joe Dante is on the list. I don't think he'll stay on the list when things change with the supplement and the doctorate selections. I do think he'll eventually find his way off the list, but for now he's got it on. He's got a spot, and I'm going to give him the respect he deserves. The next director on our list at number 6 is Ty West. And at 8 points, Ty West makes this list, and I could not be more thrilled because, as those of you that watch regularly know, I love me some Ty West. And I feel like I was on the bandwagon before everybody joined with the X and Pearl, but don't worry, there's plenty of room on this bandwagon, man. I love me some Ty West. He has 5 movies that we've talked about, 3 of which were on the syllabus proper. And one of the extra credits was one that it pained me to not put on the syllabus proper. I just couldn't squeeze it on there. That was The Innkeepers, and I absolutely love that movie. But man, Ty West can do basically no wrong from if he hadn't directed that Cabin Fever sequel. I think that he would be an immaculate director. He would be perfect. He would not have made a bad movie. And in that movie, it was actually taken away from him by the studio, and he doesn't want his name on it, so you could almost forgive that. Point is, Ty West is a fantastic director, and he has made this spot without X and Pearl being discussed, because when I did the syllabus, those movies hadn't come out yet, and they are going to be talked about in the future. I guarantee it. I guarantee we will talk about X and Pearl in the future. I guarantee it. So Ty West will definitely move up on this list, because as of the time of this recording, he is working on or about to release Maxine to complete that trio of movies, and I'm pretty sure that at least one, probably two, maybe even all three of those movies will get mentioned at some point while we go through the new horror movie supplement. So I'm expecting him to do well, to get more points and get higher up on this list. And I couldn't be more thrilled, because I am a fan of his. This is the guy I was talking about. He did get full credit for his contributions to ABC of Death, which is controversial, but I don't care, because it's Ty West. He deserves to be here. And again, if we had had X and Pearl to talk about at the time, he would have made the list anyway, so I don't even feel bad about it. I'm not, I don't care. I don't, if you don't think that was fair to give him credit for ABC of Death because there's 25 other directors, yeah, it's a legitimate argument. I don't care. I'm putting Ty West on here. I wanted him on here. He's on here. I'm glad he's on here. And if you haven't seen the movies, God, check him out. But he definitely deserves to be on this list, and I'm looking forward to see him climb the list. Our number 5 director, halfway through the list now, is M. Night Shyamalan. And I can already hear some of you. I can already hear some of you, and I don't care, because you guys know I am the big M. Night Shyamalan apologist. I love him, even though he makes some really bad movies that I cannot defend. I can't. I won't even try. Some of them that they pain me. They hurt my soul. But when he's good, man, he's good. He got 9 points, and he got 6 movies mentioned, 3 of which made the syllabus proper. And this is admittedly a place where my bias has influenced this list a bit, because again, I am a Shyamalan apologist. I really love his good movies, and so I've put a lot of them on the syllabus because I love it. It's my syllabus, and I do what I want, But it's worth noting that you don't get minus points for bad movies. Like we don't punish directors for making this list for bad movies. Bad movies just don't make the syllabus, right? So they just don't get any points. But you don't get like negative points. So I mean, some would argue, and I can't even fight this argument, that Shyamalan should be at least bumped down because he made Lady in the Water or Old, or some people would even say The Happening, but they're wrong. Go watch the video when I talk about The Happening, you'll understand. But I can't argue that point. Like, he's had some bad clunkers out there that maybe deserve demerits and maybe deserve to push him down on this list, but that's not how the math was set up. I didn't account for ways to punish people for bad movies. I just gave him credit for the movies that made the syllabus, and he made it a lot. Again, probably thanks in a large part to me, but I don't think he doesn't deserve to be on the list. I really don't. And I think a lot of you would probably agree. If you look at his best movies, the movies that we did talk about on the syllabus, I think you'd have to agree he's kind of earned a spot here. He was, again, maybe not as high, but he's earned a spot on the list as one of the top directors of the syllabus. And so it's again, I don't feel bad about it at all. He's another one that I think will benefit from staying in the horror genre. He's working a lot with Blumhouse now, and making more horror movies. The Knock at the Cabin hadn't come out when the syllabus came out, so we'll see if that gets him a little bit more points. So I do think he's another guy that has staying power, will manage to stay on the list even as it goes through updates as we go on. Number 4 on our list is David Lynch. And I have a feeling that this might be a little bit controversial to some of you, because a lot of people don't even see David Lynch as really a horror director. And, we haven't really talked about Lynch much except for some like oblique references to him on the videos. So we haven't really got into this issue about whether or not David Lynch movies are actually horror or not. And it's something that we're going to get into in depth when we get to our David Lynch video, which I promise you is coming. I keep saying it's coming. It really is. We've had some delays that I couldn't avoid, but it will be here soon. And so we'll get into more detail on why I'm so, liberal with calling things horror in regards to Lynch specifically, because I'm liberal about calling things horror in general. But he really is kind of his own thing. He's Lynchian. He's also one of my favorite directors, if not my actual favorite director. So you knew I was going to find a way to get him on the syllabus, and I did it by giving him his own subgenre. He is the only guy who had his own subgenre on the horror movie syllabus, except for one other guy that we'll talk about in just a few minutes. But he really, I couldn't put his movies anywhere else. They're Lynchian. And again, we're going to talk about that a lot in the video, but he deserved his own subgenre to me because these movies are so unique and yet unsettling in their own way. And I just, well, hell, I just wanted to talk about him, frankly. So he gets on this list with 9 points because he gets 6 movies mentioned in that video, and 3 of them make the syllabus in that video. And so that subgenre alone gets him to number 4 on our list. And yeah, again, I couldn't be happier. I love me some David Lynch. If you're not a Lynch fan, you're not happy with this ranking, I'm sure. But again, it's the maths, and he's got this his own subgenre that really helped him here. There are other directors that are going to get their own subgenres in the future, so that will even things out a little bit. It'll probably push Lynch down the list a little bit. So if you're not thrilled with this ranking, stay tuned. Eventually, we'll see this list get shuffled up, and this will change. But for now, he's my number 4, and I love it. We're up to number 3 on our list, and brace yourselves for this one, because this absolutely shocked me. John Carpenter. I expected John Carpenter to be my number 1. I thought for sure he was going to easily be the top director from the horror movie syllabus because we talk about so many of his movies. And not only was he not number 1, he's all the way down at number 3, and I was blown away. It was the number 1 reason why I wanted to make this video, because it wound up being not nearly as predictable as I thought it was going to be. The second I saw that Carpenter wasn't my top director, I couldn't believe it. And I still can't believe it. I'm still shocked. And I think this is where the math kind of worked against him a little bit, because while he has 12 points, he had 7 movies mentioned, and 5 of them were on the syllabus proper. He still gets edged out because he only gets 1 point for the extra credits, so he gets edged out by not 1 but 2 other directors, and so that kind of hurt him a little bit. And I think what also hurts him is that so many of his well-known movies kind of really aren't horror movies. I'm really liberal about what I call horror, and maybe in the supplement I'll squeeze on a couple more Carpenter movies, possibly some of the stuff that's a little bit more sci-fi. I've done it before. I could maybe do it again. So maybe the supplement will help him out and edge him a little bit higher. But I don't see him getting more than the second spot, and we'll explain why in a little bit. But I think that he's probably not going to edge up much higher, if at all. The fact that he's not really making movies anymore doesn't help either. If he was still making movies, maybe he'd make a new horror movie that would bump him back up again. But as of right now, he's stuck firmly in number 3. And I'm shocked because, objectively speaking, I'd say he's the best horror director, because he's made some incredibly important movies. And even some of his lesser known or lesser successful movies are also very, very good. Now, he has had a few clunkers in there, but like I was saying with M. Night Shyamalan, you don't get dinged, you don't get minus points for having some clunkers out there, and his clunkers are nowhere near as bad as Shyamalan's, let's be honest. But I'm reeling from this revelation. John Carpenter, number 3, blows my mind. But this makes you wonder, who are these 2 people that beat him out? Well, let's check it out. So at number 2, the person that just edged past John Carpenter, Wes Craven. And a lot of you horror fans might have guessed that one as being one of them, because Wes Craven is usually the person who's most compared to John Carpenter if you're trying to talk about like the best horror director, even though I honestly feel like Carpenter has the edge there. But Craven does have a lot going for him, not the least of which is he's had seminal movies in 3 different decades, and if Cursed had not been taken away from him by the Weinsteins and just messed with, maybe he would have had a 4th, because I genuinely believe his version of Cursed would have been really awesome. So I don't think he doesn't warrant a spot here at all. In fact, I actually picked Craven to be the best horror director of all time in a horror debate that I participated in on Noah's channel, Hamburgers and Horror. My friend Noah, if you didn't see that video, you should check it out. But I made the case that Wes Craven was the best horror director because of that, because of how important his movies were and how much time in terms of decades he had spanned. And I stand by that. I do think that he is great. But in reality, I'm still shocked that he edged past John Carpenter. I think this is where, again, the maths kind of worked against Carpenter and for Craven because he had 13 points, just one more than Carpenter when he had 8 movies mentioned. Even though only 3 of them made it on the syllabus proper, he had more extra credit movies, just enough to give him 1 extra point and get him past Carpenter. So that's what helped him out. Was he got more movies mentioned, he got more extra credits, he did more horror. The vast majority of his career is horror movies, so he had a little bit of an advantage, statistically speaking, against Carpenter. Now, I'd said Carpenter might be helped by the supplement. I don't think the same will be true for Craven. It's possible that maybe 1 or 2 more of his movies get mentioned in the supplement, but most of his great stuff or good stuff has already been touched on. And of course, he's passed away, so he's not going to be making any more movies. So I'm not really expecting Craven to move up a little bit. I do not think he'll claim the top spot. I really don't. It's possible, but it's not very likely. So yeah, Craven is number 2. He could potentially slip to number 3, but I think he's probably going to stay around the top of the list, and he deserves to. He really is a legendary horror director. Say what you will about his movies, say what you will about him. He made Nightmare on Elm Street and he made Scream, and that alone warrants being super high on this list. So Wes Craven, number 2, and I'm perfectly okay with it. And now it's time for our number 1, our top director, according to the Horror Movie Supplement. Some of you might have already figured this one out. George A. Romero. And I am okay with this, even though I didn't see it coming. I really did think it would be John Carpenter, then maybe Wes Craven, then possibly Romero. But the math really worked out in Romero's favor, and I'm perfectly okay with that because he absolutely deserves a top spot, and I've got no problem with that whatsoever. Like Wes Craven, he had 13 points. He had 8 movies that were mentioned, 5 of which made it on the horror movie syllabus proper, and that's where he got the edge. And he is, not only a really prolific and famous and accomplished director, he's the only other one that got his own subgenre sort of. When we talk about Romero zombies, it's basically just a Romero subgenre at that point. And it was so important to talk about the Romero zombie movies that I gave them their own subgenre outside of just regular old zombie movies because they're that influential, they're that important. To this day, that Romero zombie trope is the thing. It is the trope. It's what defines zombies as a creature in horror to this day. 60 years later, 55 years later, it's something that needed to be noted, that needed to be recognized, and it's being recognized here because not only did he do the zombie movies, but he did a lot of other movies too, and a lot of those got discussed here on the syllabus, and that's what gave him the win. That's what gave him the top spot, and deservedly so. Now, he did do an anthology, did Creepshow, but he did all of Creepshow. So I don't really even feel like that's a controversy because that's just his movie. He's earned this. I don't think that the supplement will help him much. The doctorate level might. The doctorate level might give him a few extra points. So I think he has a real good shot of retaining his top spot. It's going to be hard to dethrone him, and I think it should be. I think that Romero has kind of gone underlooked as compared to Craven and Carpenter as a horror legend, a horror icon in terms of directing. He really deserves that shine. So I am 100% okay with these results. I endorse these results, even though my own personal list would have these things shuffled a little bit and he would not make the top spot. He'd be in the top 3 or 4 probably. But having him in the top spot here, numbers don't lie. He's an incredible director. He's our top director for the horror movie syllabus. So that is it. George A. Romero, top 10 horror directors. Yeah, I didn't see it coming, guys. I didn't see it coming at all. I was really shocked by this. The couple of things that shocked me, the Joe Dante thing really shocked me even more than the Carpenter thing, to be honest with you. Joe Dante being on the list just really blew me away. Then let's just call it out, man. There's a guy that's not on this list that really should be on this list. His name is David Cronenberg, and it's actually upsetting that he's not on the list, but there's a good reason for it because I told you a couple other directors are going to get their own subgenres in the horror movie supplement, and one of them is going to be Cronenberg. And as a result, because I decided to do that, I actually pulled a couple of Cronenberg movies from the syllabus to make it work in the supplement the very last minute. So he lost a little bit of points, and he was real close to making the cut. So he lost a little bit there. and didn't make the cut here, but I would pretty much, if I was a betting man, I would bet money that he's going to make the next update to this horror movie syllabus top 10 directors list, because he's going to have his own subgenre. We're going to have a blast talking about him. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a couple other people that make a good case to get on this list. Young directors in particular have a really good shot. Guys like Benson and Moorhead, or Ari Aster, guys that haven't made enough movies yet, I have a feeling will find their ways onto this list. Benson and Moore had smart money on them too, finding a way on this list. And Ari Aster, depends on how prolific he is and how quickly he makes movies. But there's a couple people to watch on this list. A lot of the stuff after the cutoff for the 10 were really, really close. So a lot of people that are kind of lumped together, and it wouldn't take much for somebody to kind of rise above that group and squeeze their way up onto the list. So stay tuned. We're going to do this again in the future. I mean, I'm almost certainly going to do this again. Hopefully you like it. Let me know in the comments if you do. And if you like this kind of video, we're not going to do these a lot, because it's not really what we do here on the channel, but it's fun to just shake things up a little bit. And I have a couple of ideas for other things, maybe top 10 scream queens, for example, top 10 composers. These are some of the other things I've been kicking around for a while now. If they're interesting to you, let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what your top 10 director list would be, or if you've actually done the horror movie syllabus, do it mathematically. Tell me who wound up being your top 10 directors after you filled out the horror movie syllabus. 2 points for a syllabus list, 1 point if you give an extra credit movies, and let me know who made the cut for you, because it might not be what you think. You might be as surprised by the results as I was. This was a fun surprise for me. Thank you again to Sarah for helping me compile all the data, because it was a bear and I am not a statistician. So thank you very much. And now it's time to go ahead and dig into a horror trivia pursuit card, because this is that time of the video where I like to answer something. And in honor of Romero winning, let's go with the gore category. Because the zombie movies, they're pretty gory. So I'm going to pick the gore category. Why not? And the question is, this is appropriate. Who directed the 2007 Grindhouse fake trailer for Thanksgiving? And I love this because we're talking about the top 10 directors, and it's a director question. And no, I just pulled this out. I did not check this question ahead of time. This is a pure coincidence, and it's fantastic. It's just wonderful, fortuitous timing. And I do know the answer to this. I'm like 99% sure that I know the answer to this question. And I'll prattle on ever so slightly for you guys to have a chance to think about it. But as you may or may not know, Grindhouse was a double feature movie directed by Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. Each one of them did a movie, and to make it like a whole Grindhouse theater experience, they put fake trailers in the middle of the movie between the two features, and they had various horror directors come in and make fake trailers for it. And Thanksgiving is one of them. Is kind of the theme of holiday horror movies, which is a subgenre, and you should check that out if you haven't seen that video. But they did a fake movie trailer for Thanksgiving, in the vein of like Halloween or Sunday Night, Deadly Night, or something like that. Honestly, it's a movie I'd like to see, and there's rumors that they might still make this movie, which might be a clue to you because it was in the news not that long ago. So if you were paying attention, maybe you heard who the director was, or maybe you already know it. It is somebody who did not make this list. There's a clue for you. And could they make this list? Maybe. Yeah, they could. They could squeak on this list. They've been talked about a few times here on the syllabus, so they could absolutely make it on this list. So that's me having prattled on a bit. Go ahead and get your guesses locked in, because I'm about to make my guess. And my guess, and I'm, like I said, 99% sure I'm right here, is Eli Roth. Eli Roth is the person who did Thanksgiving. I know that Rob Zombie did one of the trailers, and Edgar Wright did one of the trailers, and Robert Rodriguez did one of the trailers that did become an actual movie with Machete. But I'm pretty sure it was Eli Roth that did Thanksgiving, but let's just double check. Eli Roth. Eli Roth is the correct answer. I got it. Did you get it? Did you guess Eli Roth? Did you guess somebody else? Did you guess Rob Zombie or Edgar Wright or who did you guess? Let me know in the comments below if you had a wrong answer or if you got the right answer. But that's what gonna do it for today's video. Top 10 horror directors according to the horror movie syllabus. It's just math. Don't blame me. But come at me in the comments below with your suggestions for who should have made the directors. And just let's keep the conversation going, because I enjoy chatting with you guys. Thank you guys very much for hanging out, especially to the end of this video. And until next week, when we come back with something that's a little bit more like we normally do here at the syllabus, class dismissed.